Meeting of the 2017 calendar year. I will call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call, please.
Mr. Newmoff?
Here.
Ms. Kalinowski? Here. Mr. Bush is absent. Vice President Darrow?
Here.
President McClelland?
Here. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like a motion to approve the previous board meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Kalinowski and Mr. Newmoff. The roll call, please.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff? Vice President Darrow?
Yes.
President McClelland?
Yes. And to tonight's meeting agenda, any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Yes, President McClellan, there is an addendum agenda for an additional action item for board resolution to approve procurement of a high school roof replacement.
So it'd be under 2A.
Correct.
With that addendum, could I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Darrow, Mrs. Kalinowski. The roll call, please.
Vice President Darrow?
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
President McClelland?
Yes. Communications to the board, Mr. Sawyers.
Thank you, President McClellan. On behalf of the faculty and staff, we want to wish everyone a successful winter recess. The holiday concerts are still under full swing. Tonight, there's actually a choir concert at the McCoy that we hope to catch part of for the high school. But students are ramping down or gearing up for the holiday break for winter recess. There's still a lot going on across the school campus. High school testing has actually started for students related to standardized tests that were required for specific courses. So there's still a strong need to finish strong prior to the end of winter recess, actually beginning next week. The other areas that we're going to talk about this evening are actually under discussion. So I'm going to withhold commentary until we get to that.
Thank you very much. An update from PLE. We got to you quickly tonight.
I'm used to being at all the long ones. Well, thank you for come to 2.5 hours long. So I'm filling in for Caroline Coas. I'm Missy Mackey, fourth grade teacher in the intermediate building. And so thank you for allowing me to have this time. Our first kudo is about our English language learning department attended the Ohio TESOL, which is teaching English to speakers of other languages. The conference was October 27th. And they attended 6 sessions on various topics related to the discipline, as well as gained valuable advice from the keynote speaker. And then they came back and they shared their information at a recent district ELL meeting, and they look forward to implementing these tips and strategies in their own classrooms, as well as informing the teachers that they work with. Next on the list, 30 teachers attended the R-Factor district planning. Teachers, along with administration and non-teaching staff, spent the day planning, reviewing, and developing the next steps of the R-Factor implementation moving forward. The training will help focus on the whole child and the emotional piece of where our district needs to go to get the values, behaviors, and outcomes as we seek as a district. And I can just say on a personal note, a member on my team, Benny Show Pesseltine, attended. She came back really excited and anxious to share what's going to be coming next. So we're excited for that. And then Kimberly Ministeri submitted the mid-year school counseling report. She's currently working in grades 1 through 3 in the primary building, and she provides counseling lessons and support to the primary student population. And so her report is on the back of the sheet that I gave you. And that's all that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next are discussion items. Any board liaison reports? With none, we'll move to board policy and a few second readings. We do have a first reading tonight on, which is kind of a big one. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Sawyers.
Thank you.
Do I need a, don't need a motion. We're good. Okay.
This is just discussion.
Ahead of myself.
You are. President McClellan, Vice President Darrow, members of the Board of Education. As President McClellan indicated, there's a couple second readings. The first is to rescind policy 5136.01 for electronic equipment. That policy has been incorporated into other updates. through Neola based upon your previous work as a Board of Education. So it's the second reading and it appears as an action item on tonight's agenda to rescind. In addition to that, the other second readings deal with the personnel policy or operational policy specifically related to drug and alcohol testing of CDL holders, employment of substitute educational aides, or a variety of operational specific elements that we went through at the last Board of Education meeting that I'm happy to answer questions on. The other first reading that Mr. McClelland indicated that's presented for you this evening is in relationship to a change for policy 5430, and this is actually to update the policy. It has not been revised since 2005 within the school district, so we're recommending a revision to it and complete update to change the original board policy in relationship to class rank to graduation honors. And actually, the Board of Education will recall from the previous meeting the discussion held by Dr. Hamilton and Mr. Carter to introduce this topic and the recommended changes throughout the school district. So the policy itself goes through and actually eliminates all previous references at the high school level for grades 9 through 12 to class rankings, specifically by grade point average, and instead introduces the opportunity for students to earn graduation honors, provided they're in good standing, and ultimately maintain strong academics, attendance, and discipline records at the high school itself. The policy is fairly simplistic in that it's just meant to be a broad statement for the school district. The details of the policy are actually in the administrative guidelines that we can update at any point in time throughout the school district moving forward. So in the administrative guidelines that I also shared with you, we are recommending this evening a change in how graduation honors are recognized specifically at New Albany High School. We have proposed in the current administrative guidelines for your discussion this evening the inclusion of graduation honors for the class of 2018 would not change. So existing board policy has to stay the same. They're attached if you go to your actual online board docs. If you actually click the 5430s, you should see them in the bottom in your content. So you have access to these electronically, and it's also the email I sent to you. So 2018, there's no changes. For the class of 2019, 2020, and 2021, the current sophomores, juniors, and current freshmen, sophomore, and juniors at New Albany High School, we're proposing that the current honor system remain the same. We presently denote any student or designate any student greater than a 4.0 GPA as a valedictorian as New Albany High School. And then in addition to that, we're proposing that the Latin honor system previously discussed at the Board of Education meeting be incorporated beginning with the class of 2019. And based upon our conversations at the last meeting, Dr. Hamilton, Mr. Carter, Dr. Troyer, and I met and also had a conversation specifically with Mr. Darrow in a meeting to talk about graduation honors and are recommending that summa cum laude be recognized at 4.3 or higher, magna cum laude be 4 to 4.29, and cum laude be 3.85 to 3.99. So those are the recommendations for the Latin honor system. We are not recommending that we delay the phase-in of Latin honors. We believe that can start with the class of 2019 and move forward. And then in addition to that, beginning with the class of 2022, which would be the current 8th grade class that we denote or designate, one valedictorian with the absolute highest GPA would be recognized, one salutatorian with the absolute second highest GPA be recognized, and then continue with the Latin honor system. The conversations continued at the high school in relationship to the phase-in approach. Most changes that happen within the state, either related to standardized testing, curriculum changes, or new requirements, do not impact students once they have entered the high school. So to follow suit, the current proposal to you this evening for discussion is that the phase-in of the changes, with the exception of the Latin honor system, and switching to one absolute valedictorian and one absolute salutatorian would not begin until the class of 2022. Again, tonight's the first reading of board policy. The administrative guidelines I can update based upon the board conversation. I don't believe it's going to require a policy change because there's nothing denoted in the policy as to how we will recognize the students. That's all in administrative guidelines. The only other place that this appears pending Board of Education conversation is in the Program of Studies for New Albany High School. That's actually an action item on tonight's agenda. So I wrote the language of the action item to give me the flexibility to make a change pending the outcome of this discussion, because I had to put something on the agenda, knowing that we were going to talk about the policy and the administrative guidelines associated to the years that would be applicable for which students when. And I think that's the conversation we will now have with the Board of Education. So I'm happy to answer any additional questions. Dr. Choi or Dr. Hamilton and Mr. Carter are also available to answer any additional questions related specifically to this policy, because it is first reading tonight.
One clarifying question. As it relates to the difference between board policy and administrative policy, what would be required if we wanted to make the administrative policy that you just read, the details of that, if we thought it would be best to make that board policy, or is there a reason that you'd not want to do that?
It's really just to give, without having to bring policy back to the Board of Education for additional action in the future. So there could be a conversation and we could change administrative guidelines tomorrow, and it wouldn't require the schedule of a board meeting. So if it's in policy itself, it has to go through the normal process that comes forward to the Board of Education based upon your normal meeting calendar. Administrative guidelines can change tomorrow because they're not adopted by the board. The policy is adopted by the board, the administrative guidelines are written by the administration.
So could we approve today the administrative guidelines and then request that it be brought back to the board for change in board policy to formalize the administrative policy into board policy?
Yes, that becomes part of the conversation, but you're really not approving. You don't approve administrative guidelines. You provide direction based upon where you want to go in policy, and then I create administrative guidelines to follow your policy.
Gotcha.
So board governs policy, administration writes guidelines.
Gotcha.
But you can have that detail in the
Yes.
policy if that's what you
Right.
want.
If we want it to actually be that explicit in the policy, we have the right to do that. And then that would be part of the second reading, that it would be revised and brought back for your January 8th meeting.
Okay, thank you.
That's the conversation that I need direction on.
Michael, the summa cum laude honor compared to the current valedictorian recognition, what percentages approximately are we talking about in terms of the difference?
Right. So the Latin honor system, as it's currently denoted by grade point average, will recognize approximately the top 25% of the graduating class. So right now, with valedictorian, and it varies year by year, we could have the top 37% of a class recognized based upon the valedictorian system.
And what about the top honor?
The top honor for summa actually becomes literally the top 10, 11, or 12. This year, it would be the top 12 students currently in the senior class based upon a tie in GPA. So in most years, it will probably be the top 10, 11, or 12 kids, depending on any ties in the GPA. So it's more prestigious than it is today from the standpoint that we have 4.0 and above gets recognized as a valedictorian. There's not a single student named the valedictorian today, and there's not a single student named the salutatorian based upon the GPA.
Well, if the Latin system starts at 3.85, that then brings in a larger number of students than the current valedictorian, which is 4.0, correct?
No, it appears to be that way because we're going to 3.85. But today, under the 4.0 scale system, there's about 37% of the senior class, Dwight, is that accurate, that gets the recognition. In our calculations, you will end up being somewhere around the top 28%.
Okay.
I'm confused as to how that's possible numerically. If valedictorian is 4.0 and above and we're starting Latin honors at 3.85, wouldn't it sort of mathematically have to capture more?
I understand the question, and I'm trying to remember the math because we looked at multiple graduation years to look at past history of how it would apply.
Sure.
So I don't want to mix up the percentages in which class we were looking at. So we've looked at the last 3 graduating classes to try to look at a percentage. And that's where I think on average it came out to be 28% of what would be recognized in the Latin honor system.
I don't want to actually get wrapped up in all that because I think we've had some really good conversation. We had some discussion at the last board meeting on this topic, and we've had some, as you pointed out, we had some discussion last week. So I think there's been great discussion on this topic, and in general, so I'd like to start and just say thank you to the administration in regards to the work that went into this in the first place, because I think this is a smart move. The change to Latin honors, I think, is really a great change. I think recognizing that we expressed an interest in having it be more prestigious than the present system, and you responded by increasing the GPA required. I think captures really the essence of what our feedback has been. So I think that's terrific. The change to a single valedictorian, I think also is in keeping with this board's interest and this administration's interest in really celebrating academic achievement. You know, we celebrate achievement in all areas of the district, and I think it's really the right step to take to celebrate. You know, we celebrate athletes at the top of their game, and I think we should celebrate academic athletes at the top of their game. So I think all the changes really are very much in keeping with the direction we've been taking the district and the accomplishment that the district has made over the last couple of years in its achievements. So I certainly salute the changes. The only other comment I'd make, and I appreciate the history involved in making a change that has some potential impact to people 4 years from now. Nonetheless, as I mentioned at the last meeting, I think waiting 4 years to implement the valedictorian change, I haven't heard a compelling argument why that's necessary, especially since the current large number of valedictorians really doesn't carry a whole lot of what's the word I'm looking for? It's not that special. I mean, it's nice, but it is so broad. And the change to Latin honors really captures all of that. So there is a top student each year, and simply recognizing it seems to be something that we can implement sooner than that. I can accept an argument that doing it for next year, could certainly impact a small group of students that are vying for the top spot, but implementing it for the year following. So not impacting any upperclassmen, but implementing it for the 2020 school year seems to be a reasonable compromise so that we can put these policies in place and get them in place. So I would advocate for accelerating the second part, accelerating the valedictorian portion to the 2020 school year. And I think that's it. For me.
For you?
For me.
Anything else?
I would just like to thank the administration for all the work put into this. I've vetted this with a few people in the community. I don't have a child in high school. I think what I have heard is that we have probably too many valedictorians, and that maybe dilutes the honor. So I think the movement to honoring maybe more of the top 25% has been well received from those that I've spoken to. I also would agree that we honor our student athletes, we honor our robotics club. We have MVPs in many different aspects of our school district, and I know there were some concerns expressed about competition, but I think that threads through life, through college, through the workforce, and our students will make choices about what they would like to do. If they want to go for this honor, they'll make that decision to take the courses that may be required to achieve it. So I am also in favor, and thank the administration for adding the valedictorian and salutatorian opportunity for our students to achieve that honor. And I also am of the mindset that I don't see a compelling reason to delay this for 4 years. That can be an eternity, and I haven't heard how it really impacts college admissions. I've spoken to some of those who are involved in college admissions, and don't feel as if it would be impacting a current 9th or 10th grader relative to college admissions or otherwise being able to earn a Latin honor. So I would also be in favor of accelerating the implementation of this to 2020.
I'm excited about the Latin system. I think it accomplishes several things that are really positive for students. Naming the top performer and the salutatorian, I think, is important. And, you know, when a student achieves that, I think it's important to recognize that. I like that there's 3 tiers to the system, and the first tier actually allows some honors for kids that are a little below the 4.0, because that's an achievement too. And I like that the top honor, the Summa honor, is more prestigious than what we're currently doing to honor the students. So I think, you know, there's so many positives about it. Phil and I talked about this, and I thought a lot about my daughter, who's a sophomore, and working toward a certain GPA. And I feel like to switch the program for her class, I would be comfortable with, because I feel like she isn't as far down the road in taking classes and aiming for one of these honors as a junior or senior would be. I think it wouldn't be fair to change it for, you know, a rising senior. But for the lower classmen, I would be comfortable with it. And I think there's so many positives to it that I hate to wait a full, 3 more years to implement it.
Well, yeah, I think we're all in agreement there. So
what
if you could, what's that?
That's
what
what I
you
heard.
hear?
Is that clear?
So, really, I don't have anything else I need to add to that. It's been pretty well said. So if
So
you,
just to summarize, we will begin recognition of Latin honors with the class of 2019, so the rising seniors, and then beginning with the class of 2020 and all changes thereafter, Latin honor system with 1 valedictorian and 1 salutatorian. Correct?
For administrative.
Yeah,
policy.
so we will update the administrative guidelines. So now let me ask you the next question. So the policy 5430 that was presented this evening, do you want to leave it broad, because typically policy is extremely broad, or do you want the specificity of the Latin honor system beginning in 2019 and 1 salutatorian, 1 valedictorian beginning in 2020 in policy? So do you want me to move it from guidelines to policy, or do you want to leave it in guidelines?
I think we should put it in policy too.
So do I.
Yep.
I'd like to just ask, if I may, Dwight, how are you feeling about that? No comment?
So, I mean, I'd like to put it in policy, because I think this really is an important statement of what we believe in terms of the direction that the district is going for acknowledging academic excellence.
Okay, we will modify 5430 because tonight's just a first reading, so we'll have it modified for the January 8th Board of Education meeting with all the updates. And then for later in the agenda for program of studies, just know that the action item on the agenda authorizes me to modify the program of studies based upon this discussion. So that too will change in the program of studies that's presented this evening as an exhibit, because there's a paragraph in there that talks about when the changes for graduation honors would take place. So we will update that based upon this conversation as well.
Thank you.
That concludes board policy.
okay, thank you very much. We have our first opportunity for public participation. Mr. Tom Romer. Mr. Romer? And when you come up, just for the record, give everybody your name and your address, and we've got 5 minutes.
All right, Tom Romer, 4995 Brooksview Circle. I've certainly come here in the past as a warmonger. I don't come tonight as a warmonger. I come as a concerned parent. Many of you know me, but I'd like to first start with a little bit reading out of our own wellness guideline. I'm here tonight to discuss beverages in the vending machines at school. I've been talking with Mike Bush a little bit about this, and he's relayed some information from the school to me, but I'd like to read a little bit about what's in our own policy versus some of the law. I think what we're missing here. Schools can play an important role in the development process by which students establish their health and nutrition habits by providing nutritious meals and snacks through the school meal programs. I guess a little bit background, I don't know if you all are aware of this, in the middle school gym, cafeteria, whatever we call that building, there are vending machines which sell Mountain Dew Kickstart, Mountain Dew, a host of other things. In the 2-5, which is, we call the intermediate building, I guess, is a machine that also sells the Kickstart, which also has a sticker on it which says, do not use during school hours. And I'll get a little bit more into the law here in a second, but our vending machine policy, we can have vending machines, yada, 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 provided the following conditions are satisfied. The district's share of the revenues are managed by the treasurer in accordance with relevant board policies and administrative guidelines, and no products are vended which would conflict with, contradict information or procedures contained in the district's educational program on health and nutrition. On food service, which I will say the vending machines are a complement to food service, even though food service doesn't sell those directly, they're still there. Shall comply with federal state regulations, the USDA Smart Snack School nutrition standards. We will consult with a dietitian license under RC chapter blah, 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 because very specific certifications that this dietitian will have. Also, the district shall serve only nutritious food in accordance with the nutritional standards adopted by the board in compliance with the current USDA. I think you get the point. Ohio Senate Bill 210, which was passed in 2010, goes over healthy snacks in schools and what can and cannot be served. The benefit of our beautiful school campus is we are one campus. So my second grade daughter can walk into any building at any time during the day. What these guidelines say, essentially for middle schools and elementary schools, essentially nothing other than water or milk or juice from midnight to 30 minutes after school. These vending machines have been on during lunch. It really came to my attention when my son laughed about how many of these Kickstarts came out of his neighbor's locker when he opens it up. Just piles of them come out. When I come home from traveling internationally, I come back and I see, trust me, I'm an example of it. Americans are larger people. We have, Mountain Dew and cookies, and we are eating too much, and it starts in the schools, I think. Middle school, water, milk, and juice, no other beverage, midnight till 30 minutes after school starts.
You have 1 minute left.
High schools, and then goes into high schools. There was an argument made that the middle school cafeteria and high school, since they're shared, it goes on the predominant class in there. That the high school lunch might be 4 periods and the middle school is 3 periods. So the high school rules could govern it. Not true, because there's gym class in those all day long for the middle school students. My calculations is about 2/3 middle school. So my summary is we are not following the law. I'd like to understand what your thoughts are on that. How much money do we make from these drinks? Can we find an alternative revenue source? I'd like to know what the nutritionist said when consulted about having these in our schools. And other than high school buildings, these should not be operating anywhere between midnight to 30 minutes after school as the law allows. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I need a motion for tonight's treasurer's items A through C.
So moved.
Ms. Kalinowski,
Second.
Mr. Darrow, Ms. Jenkins.
Financials, monthly financials, we continue to run on plan in all areas, both revenue and expenses. You'll see a list of appropriation modifications that we're making. The majority of those are to align with the budget that the board approved in October, with a couple of increases because of enrollment or increases in the budget. So for instance, the EPA grant, we're spending money, we're going to get money back, but I have to increase that budget for those expenses for the buses. We have one more to buy, that'll be in January, and then we will have bought all of the buses and expect to have most of the money, well, all of the money that we were supposed to receive back from the EPA for those buses. So that actually worked out very well. And then you see a transfer of funds for $750,000 from general fund to permanent improvement. That is the original $750,000 we had in our general fund budget. That's not money that we added to the 5-year forecast for in case the PI levy did not pass. We will be updating the forecast and bringing that back to the board in January to take those expenses out of some of the years, and we have some roof discussions that may cause us to keep some of the funds. We'll transfer some of those funds into PI.
Any questions? With none, could I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Vice President Darrow?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
President McClelland?
Yes. Next, superintendent items, A through D, including the item that we approved as an addendum. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Ms. Kalinowski and Mr. Newmoff. Mr. Sawyers.
Thank you. Begin this evening with personnel. The personnel agenda items are standard with the exception of number, find it now, I apologize, number 7. It's my honor this evening, but the sadness at the same time, to recognize 3 retirements from our school district. The first is Pam Charles as the coordinator of food services effective July 31st. Charlie Osborne, who's been an operator, maintenance tech, and maintenance employee at the bus garage for over 25 years, on January 1st. His last day is December 31st. And Dr. Marilyn Troyer is completing her 6th year in the school district in July and 40th year in public education, and is electing to retire as the assistant superintendent from our school district.
How many years in public education?
40.
Wow. That is awesome.
So Marilyn's hit a milestone, and she's beginning the next chapter to enjoy life in a different way. So she's going to be greatly missed, as will the others who will retire from our school district this year. We'll have a retirement reception at the end of the school year. But the acceptance of Marilyn's resignation this evening allows me to begin the process that's necessary to start looking for the next assistant superintendent to replace Dr. Marilyn Troyer.
For the record, I have not accepted her resignation.
So,
Not that I have any power in this regard, but
You do have a vote.
it's tremendous on Marilyn's part. So we're very, very happy for Marilyn, but sad for us. She will be greatly missed. Letter B this evening is for general business. You have field trip action item this evening for students to attend the Junior State of America Winter Congress in Arlington, Virginia, as well as the high school students to attend the LEAD conference in Chicago. The second item is the program of studies. And again, as the last sentence is worded, I have authorization based upon your action this evening to incorporate any changes in discussion related to graduation honors before its public release to students in January. Number 3 this evening's approval of credentialed evaluators. This is just a correction for cleanup that Dr. Troyer and I found in going through records to make sure that everyone was accounted for in the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System. Letter C is board policy for, again, second readings for board approval this evening to move those forward. And letter D is donations. And as always, we're very grateful to everyone that chooses to make donations to the school district for a wide variety of different types of initiatives. And then lastly, on the addendum agenda, number 2A, it's the board resolution to approve procurement of the high school roof replacement. As shared through prior communications electronically with Board of Education, we've been working with Garland and DBI to go through U.S. communities to go through a joint purchasing agreement for eligibility based upon the fact that we're enrolled and eligible as Ohio Political Division as a school district. So we basically have gone through that process based upon all the work that was done in the roofing analyses at the high school. And before you this evening, and for simplistic purposes, I gave you a map to try to look at the campus, but we're actually recommending, based upon the bids that were received back on Friday from 4 different vendors, 3 of which bid both shingle and metal roof for replacement at the high school. We're actually recommending that the I building, which is the music performing arts building at the high school, and that's letter I, it's towards the left-hand column by the parking lot. H, which is the high school library, which also will include significant dome work. The dome will actually be refurbished first prior to the actual shingles being replaced on the high school library. E, F, and G, which are the 3 main academic buildings, the original academic buildings at the high school, as well as letter A, which is the high school gymnasium, which is the metal roof, actually be approved this evening through contract with Garland DBS Incorporated through the contract for U.S. Communities to award an amount not to exceed $1.5 million to actually begin the replacement process for roofing at New Albany High School. Mrs. Jenkins, do you have anything to add to that?
They would start doing this project the day after school is out, and they are expected to be completed before, I think it's August 1st, right?
Pending weather.
Right. Pending weather. They may, if there was some additional cleanup work or finalization, may have to come in on weekends or after school hours when school's back in session, but we expect and they feel pretty confident that they can get that amount done. There are 3 crews that they're going to have, so that's why they believe they can be completed in that 2-month window.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
And then in addition to that, the other point that I would add, so it's technically it's $1,312,837. There's an $11,747 discount for 2017 pricing. That's why we're bringing it forward tonight, knowing that we're going to do this work. We should take advantage and get the additional discount that's available to award the contract before December 21st. And then next summer, based upon the U.S. Communities bid process, the 2018 pricing that we've currently received for additional work in the scope is still valid through December of 2018. So we did confirm that with Garland DBS today and the subcontractors that would be awarded the contract. Alumni Roofing is in all likelihood the subcontract based upon all the bids that came back and those numbers that we shared with you. Next summer, they are also the lowest responsible bid for the other areas on your map called B, which is additional metal roof at the high school, B flat, which are the rubber roofs adjacent to the high school gymnasium, letter C, which is the natatorium, and letter D, which is the high school weight room building. So next summer, the scope would also include the replacement of the remaining metal roofs on the high school campus to finish the original buildings at New Albany High School. And the estimate for next summer work is just over $1 million. So it's $1,001,000 change.
And if I could clarify, when he says next summer, he means summer of 2019.
Correct. Right. So we have scope for summer of 18 and we have scope for summer of 19. It will take 2 years to do the roof work at New Albany High School. The only buildings that then remain at New Albany High School are J, K, and L, and those are the 3 buildings that were part of the expansion that were not built until 2003. So they're currently not slated for replacement until late 2020s, early 2030, based upon their current condition and age.
So we're only asking approval though for the first phase, which is the 1.5 million. And then in December of next year, we would lock in that pricing for 2019 for the remaining area. The other thing that we will be bringing to you likely, and we can discuss this, is that because we only have a half a year of tax collection right now, we would only be collecting about $600,000. So what we would like to do is the money that we had included in the forecast, if the issue 42 hadn't passed the 1.12 million, is to actually take that money and transfer it into the PI, so continue to spend it, and then update the forecast in the last 4 years, taking that money out. which would positively impact the forecast. But this would allow us to have the funds available between the first half collection plus that general fund money to replace this part of the roofs. And then next year, we would continue with just the normal collection of, use the funds from the normal collection of issue 42.
Does making the transfer into the PI fund impact at all what's done with the cash in prior to that? So we have a positive cash balance,
Mhm.
right? So that money is invested in some ways. So does moving it into the PI change how the money is managed until it's actually spent?
No.
Okay.
It's just,
It's an internal
been-
account.
It protects it from line item for
Understand.
capital.
yes, correct.
Given the scope of the work that's required, we believe it's in our best interest and due diligence to do that.
We would still have a positive impact to the 5-year forecast because years
Right.
2, 3, 4, and 5, we would just take that out. We wouldn't transfer it, but this would still be like we're spending that money in the current year.
And just like replacing shingles on your own roof, once this is done, is there a
30 years.
30-year lifespan?
That's the estimate. And then we did pick, and I didn't go into all the specificity, but we had put out multiple alternates in the bid itself that we had shared in the bid package to you to actually remove the felt paper and put on Aqua Shield as an additional ice water guard because it actually prolongs the roof life. And it ended up being $40,000 difference to actually purchase Aqua Shield for all the roofs that have shingles. We believe it's an investment that will pay dividends in the
No-brainer.
future.
Yeah.
So that is actually part of the recommendation this evening that's built into the cost. We are not using felt paper, we're using Aqua Shield. So we've done a lot. Becky and I've learned a lot about roofs at the high school. We know a lot about them, but we're excited that this can actually begin to move forward. There's a tremendous amount of work that this means at New Albany High School this summer. It's going to literally shut down the quad, the parking lots. It's going to be an interesting summer, but we're going to figure out how to make all this happen based upon your approval this evening. We'll start the meetings that are necessary. All the materials will ship by March 31st to the contractor. It's guaranteed to be on site the day after school. Staging actually starts that week. They're talking about Memorial Day weekend, so we're going to talk to Mr. Carter to figure out how that's all going to happen. With 1,500 kids still at New Albany High School, well, less the senior class, so 1,100 kids at New Albany High School. But the work itself will begin the day after school goes out.
Great.
That concludes my report.
Any other questions? If not, could I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
Vice President Darrow?
Yes.
President McClellan?
Yes. We have a second opportunity for public participation. Mr. Romer. Yeah, please, just so that it can be recorded.
I did speak at length with the nutrition consultant at the Ohio Department of Education today. She was fully on board with she kind of outlined what I've said today. So other than the high school building or the middle school cafeteria during lunch, that was the only time those vending machines could be on. So I just forgot to mention that.
Thank you. At this point, I need a motion to enter into executive session as permitted by section 121.22G4 of the Ohio Revised Code for the purpose of considering the terms and conditions of employment for a public employee.
So moved.
Mr. Newmoff, Mr. Darrow, could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
Vice President Darrow?
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
President McClellan?
Yes. There will be no action expected out of this executive session, so thank you all for joining us.